ABC 7 presents Eyewitness Newsmakers with Adrienne Alpert.
Today on Eyewitness Newsmakers, we'll meet a state prisoner who faced 25 to life. He's now one of California's first inmates to come home because voters approved Proposition 36, modifying the three strikes law.
I have changed my life. I'm proud of that event.
After more than 20 years in prison, Aaron Collins was released May 7th, facing a very different future than the one he faced before Prop 36 passed last November.
It is over for me, you guys. I am officially out. Peace out, everybody. Starting a new year, a new life.
Also on this program, a public defender and the president of the California Police Chiefs Association looking at what the law means for prisons and for the public. Good morning, I'm Adrienne Alpert, and later we will hear from the president of the California Police Chiefs Association. First, my guests from the LA Public Defender's Office, Harvey Sherman. He's the deputy in charge of the Public Integrity Assurance Section. And Aaron Collins, one of the first three-strike lifers to come home to LA. Aaron, very soon after voters approved Prop 36, you began writing me, predicting you'd soon be home. Here you are, after more than 20 years behind bars. Why were you so certain that you would qualify under Prop 36?
Well, based on the initiative that was presented to the public and the rules that were set forth, I met the requirement, eligibility, and I just knew that I was eligible for that, and I just felt it that the California voters would do the right thing this time, and they was fully apprised of what it meant and how it was going to reflect and target the right people. I just knew that I was coming home.
We're going to get a little bit more down the road here about your story and how you got to where you were, but just had to ask you, because someone would always ask this question, what was the first thing you wanted to do when you got out?
The first thing I wanted to do was just inhale the fresh air, the different air than what I've had that was in prison. And I just wanted to be around family and just, you know, those who love me and who have supported me for all the years that I was incarcerated.
Let us move very quickly to Mr. Sherman. I want to first point out that you are not Mr. Collins. Lawyer Karen Flynn, the Chief Assistant Public Defender in Sacramento, could not be here, but you are certainly familiar with the law and you are familiar with Mr. Collins' case. And I wanted to talk to you about what voters approved by 70% nearly last November, that a life sentence for a third strike would apply still for serious or violent crime. We understand what violent means. But can you explain what the courts are going to be looking at when it does come to a serious crime?
Well, serious and violent crimes, there's essentially two lists in the penal code. One is labeled serious crimes, one is labeled violent crimes. They don't always match up. One of the considered violent crimes, residential burglary, where the person's present at home. On the serious felony side, it's a residential burglary in the first degree. So they're similar, but they're not quite the same. Each of the lists is slightly different than the other, but there's a whole lot of overlap. So if we're talking about violent crimes, burglaries, residential burglaries, robberies, carjacks, murder, the ones that we traditionally think of, and then some ones we don't traditionally think of, well, explosive devices, possessing explosive devices or things like that.
The Criminal Justice Legal Foundation, Michael Rushford, after this was approved, predicted, quote, a wildfire of criminal activity that will happen once these prisoners start to get out. In your opinion, and we've had, what, about 100 out so far plus, what are you seeing, and do you worry about that in any sense?
Well, I know that from the CDCR statistics, we've had about 620 or so inmates statewide released so far. We do know from Los Angeles County under District Attorney Cooley's policy, most of the guys who are eligible, who are currently serving sentences, they've been in for about 12 to 19 years. So what that does for LA County is it's actually aged the population of the inmates who are going to be subject to Prop 36 relief. And we know from demographics that the older a person gets, the less likely it is they're going to commit a crime, any crime, let alone a violent crime. So I don't foresee a firestorm of criminal activity. What I foresee is that there will probably be some marginal activity from some of the population, probably small percentages, but we're going to wait to see what the data shows.
Mr. Collins, let's talk about your history. You were in prison for burglary and robbery, and then in 1995, you were sentenced under 3 strikes because you were caught with marijuana in your prison
That is correct.
cell. You were going to sell it.
I was going to sell it, yeah, to another inmate. It was my means for survival. Didn't really have the family support, so.
And when you found out that it was a 3rd strike and that they were sending you to jail for life after you were sentenced on that 3rd one, what was your first reaction to that?
It kind of hurt real bad because initially I didn't really believe it because the Department of Correction has a disciplinary system that is in place that just about whatever crime that is committed in-house or inside of the institution, they have a disciplinary procedure in place that will punish you for taking away 150 days or taking away 60 days, all depending on the degree of the actual rule violation. You can you can hurt somebody, stab somebody real bad, and you can probably lose like 1 year of time and then be placed in the segregating housing unit known as the SHU in Pelican Bay or Tehachapi or in Corcoran for an additional 2 years, and that will suffice as the actual punishment. But now they started to making these referrals to the district attorney's office for additional prosecution, and I was subjected to that for such a minute crime.
And again, your personal reaction to it?
I didn't actually believe it at first because it didn't actually set in because I could not believe that there was a law in place that would actually target it small, minute crimes such as possession of marijuana. But after it actually hit me, it just broke me completely down. I could not believe it. I started to feel different. It wasn't no longer me feeling as if I was a regular inmate anymore. It was as if I felt as if I was a convicted murderer or somebody because I was sharing the same time as a convicted murderer. So my ideology, my personality and behavior, everything changed. It was like now I'm a murderer, now I'm sort of like in this particular lane as opposed to the regular lane of going home.
1995, you were looking at life in prison, and yet, somewhere in that time and over this period of time, you have earned 2 associate college degrees.
Actually 4.
4. You have to get your CV updated,
Yeah,
I guess.
I have 4.
You've written 2 books.
That is correct.
One's a cookbook.
One is a cookbook.
And your other book tells a little bit about your life.
The other one is Crack Dreams. It's an autobiography about the 7 horrible years of my drug addiction.
Is that, can we say, what brought you to prison to begin with?
Yes, I committed crime, burglaries and robberies just to support what eventually became a $300 a day drug habit.
And that's what brought you into prison to
And
begin
that's
with.
what brought me to prison.
And this was not just you, this was also in your family too, your mother?
Yeah, well, my mom was on heroin and she passed away in 1987, but I guess you can say there was it's hereditary of drug usage in my family.
All right, the question that anybody would have to ask at this point is what turned you around?
What turned me around was a belief in self, to know that I do not want to be in prison again. I do not want to live the same lifestyle that I lived when I was on the streets, because it was painful because of the fact that I have lost respect from families and friends. I used to sleep in alleys. I used to eat out of garbage cans. I used to be so bad that neighbors and families no longer wanted me around. And I didn't want that anymore.
Mr. Sherman, obviously Mr. Collins' story and how he's turned his life around is so compelling, and yet is any of this part of what the court looks at when it's deciding to grant relief under Prop 36?
Well, the court's going to look at a number of things. The court's going to look at, first, whether they're eligible under the statute, and then the court's going to look at suitability. And there's a number of factors that go into suitability. There's the criminal history itself, and then there's any what we call mitigating factors or any other relevant factors. So one of the things that we take a look at from the public defender side, and actually for the entire indigent defense bar, we're going to take a look at entire social history. Most of our clients, the vast majority, didn't end up in prison because they grew up in a gated community in the suburbs. Most of our clients grew up in difficult situations, not using it as an excuse, but it kind of tells you where they came from. So if they came from a difficult situation where it was a single parent family where one of the parents was incarcerated and there was difficulty with support, difficulty with food security, difficulty with housing security. We know a lot of our clients move around a lot with their family because of these financial issues. That all kind of builds up a long time. We know that that kids who move around a lot, who have food security and housing security, don't do well in school. A lot of them end up dropping out, and when you drop out, you have a lot fewer things that you can do with your life. And then, of course, the drugs. And a lot of the outlet is self-medication because life is very rough. The drugs are kind of the outlet. And once you get hooked on the drugs, it's feeding that addiction.
All right, let's talk about that and how we avoid recidivism and some other questions. Our conversation continues with Eyewitness Newsmakers when we come right back.
You're watching Eyewitness Newsmakers.
Taya?
All right, we're back now talking about Proposition 36 with Harvey Sherman, LA Public Defender's Office, and Aaron Collins, a parolee, Prop 36. Let me ask you real quick, Mr. Collins, tell me what prisons in the state of California you've been in.
I've been in Pelican Bay, High Desert, New Folsom. I've been in Corcoran, Lancaster, Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility out in San Diego. I was in Centinela.
And why were you moved around so much?
Because of the point system that changed in the Department of Corrections.
And for all of us who just kind of perk up when we hear Pelican Bay, isn't that usually for pretty hardened criminals?
Well, yes, it is for hardened criminals, but a lot of times the Department of Corrections have a policy that if you apply for a transfer and if you try to go to a particular prison, if it's closed for intake, they have a right, according to the policy, to place you where there is an available bed.
Did you ever feel in danger in some of these prisons?
I never felt in danger because I've learned from some of the old timers there that the best way to do time is to keep your mouth closed and stay out of other people's business, and I've been very successful at that.
We've seen a lot of prison movies where that doesn't always seem to be possible.
Well, I think the only time that someone will really get involved is when it becomes racial or from a riot nature.
And you stayed out of all that.
I had to participate based on race, but for the most part, I stayed out of it.
It is an amazing thing, Mr. Sherman, recidivism. They say, what, 70% or so commit crimes again. If prison isn't the answer, and did Prop 36 for these guys getting out, are there programs in place to make sure that they do have a place to turn as opposed to going back to an old life?
No, Prop 36 did not incorporate any type of programming, any type of funding, especially for any type of transitional programming. That's one of the things we're working on. I know that the folks up at Stanford University have been working on resources. The Public Defender's Office has been working on referrals and resources. One of the things we've been trying to do is to get probation department with the AB 109 money to try to, and that's the realignment money, to try to get some of our clients' services through that particular outlet.
You know what I'm saying? I think they're doing that for a person to be older. And there's a lot of guys who make excuses that there is really nothing out there for them. There's not this. We cannot really depend on the Department of Corrections or the probation officer to provide these services for us. I think when a person gets out and he gets his life right and he's dead serious on being productive, he has to search these avenues for himself. He has to make them better for himself. And that's what I do. I go out, I don't depend on the parole agent, I don't depend on the probation department. I just go out and try to make things happen for myself.
But let's be practical about this right now, Mr. Collins. You don't have a driver's license yet.
No,
and you got to work on that.
Yes.
And no transportation at this moment.
No.
And no job at this moment.
No job at this moment.
But we're going to put a pitch out there for you right now to anybody who would like to give you a job.
That is correct.
Contact me. We're on Twitter. You can email me. You can call me at the station. And we'll get you in touch with Mr. Collins because we'd love to see you get a job. I think that's probably one of the best ways to get your life right, don't you think?
I'm great. I'm bilingual. My thing is radio. I'm into the media, you know.
At this point, any job, though, some work will do?
Any job, something, you know, would be great. Anything would do.
With your college degrees, and your degrees are in what?
I have a degree in business, one in paralegal studies. I have a degree in arts and humanity and liberal arts. And just recently, last week, I took finals at Coastline Community College for 3 additional degrees in sociology, social and behavioral sciences, and American studies.
Personally, if I was looking for a job for you, I'd say sales would be a real good one. You could sell just about anything.
That'd be great.
I still want to talk more about that, you know, not only, Mr. Sherman, this kind of thing, but diversion and jobs. Why isn't the system also providing that?
Well, our system isn't exactly designed to provide to
Are there
provide.
agencies? Are there places that you can link
There are a
people
lot
like
of
Mr. Collins with?
nonprofits. There are a lot of nonprofits, and you know, this is something that we're constantly searching out. Our biggest concern is the immediate transition upon release, because we found a number of different issues. You get released from prison, and what's going to happen in the next week, and that's really the critical period of time to make sure we get placements for folks. So that's something that we're actually working on. Amity House is one of the organizations. The Facts Education Fund, the Families to Amend the California Three Strikes. They have an education fund. They have a reentry coordinator. We've been working with him over there. We've been working with a number of different folks, including the drug placement coordinator at the Superior Court, who works with the drug court. So we're trying to find places before they get released so that they have a transition.
We have 15 seconds left. Mr. Collins, have any of them found you?
Well, what I did was I was referred to Friends Outside. It's a nonprofit organization, as well as the Work Resource Center that is located around the metropolitan areas of Los Angeles. The Work Resource Center in general really helps a person who really wants to help themselves.
All right, Mr. Collins, we're going to have to leave it there. We know we want to help you, and we hope to hear from anybody who'd like to give you a job.
That'd be great.
Aaron Collins and Harvey Sherman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Coming up, a different perspective from the president of the California Police Chiefs Association.